Throughout this series, we've been talking about the characteristics of a great church, of getting in the ring. A lot of people are just shadow boxing and they're not really engaged. And the reason a lot of people don't get engaged, whether it's serving or inviting or worshiping, is because they feel shame. This last lesson on giving is the same barrier, shame. A lot of people feel embarrassed that they're not giving anything to God out of their finances. They know the biblical truth, but they haven't organized their life in a way to live it out. And maybe that shame holds you from even trying to give to God. Look, God doesn't want you to give out of guilt. He wants you to give out of grace. And the more you understand God's grace, the more it compels you to give in every area of our life, time, treasure, and talent. In this week's message, Dave mentioned 2 Corinthians 9:7. God loves a cheerful giver. I want to back up to verse 1 and read the whole chapter together as we close out this series, talking about a difficult topic of money. I want to have an honest conversation about giving. So here's the rules for the road. There's going to be no shaming in this session. There's going to be no guilt, whether you're giving or not giving. And there's going to be no avoidance of the topic, because you can't grow when you ignore the areas that you need to grow in. So let's begin in verse 1. There's no need for me to write to you about this service to the Lord's people, for I know your eagerness to help. And I've been boasting about it to the Macedonians, telling them that since last year, you and Achaia were ready to give, and your enthusiasm has stirred most of them to action. But I'm sending the brothers in order that our boasting about you in this matter should not prove hollow, but that you may be ready, as I said you would be. The setting of this actually is in Acts 19 and 20. The Apostle Paul has been traveling about the area of Turkey and Greece for the better part of a couple of years. And now he's going to Jerusalem. He doesn't know it, but this will be his last trip to Jerusalem. And when he gets to Jerusalem, he wants to give them this massive offering from all the Gentile churches that have been planted. This is actually an attempt at ethnic unity through economic generosity. All those Gentile churches that the Jews typically look down on, they're going to be generous in giving to the Jews that are going through a severe famine. It's a great idea. Let's stop now and answer this question in your group. How can our generosity stir up other Christians to take their next step in giving? Did someone do that for you? Not only did the Macedonians' generosity encourage those in Achaia, but it also encouraged those in Jerusalem. If you fast forward in the book of Acts, Paul gets there, he gives this great gift, and then immediately he gets arrested. And he's on a series of trials and standing before the governor Felix. He's defending himself, saying, I wasn't stirring up any trouble. I wasn't a rabble rouser. Listen to Paul's words. After an absence of several years, I came to Jerusalem to bring my people gifts for the poor and to present offerings. The offerings of the Macedonians didn't just help the Achaeans learn generosity. They didn't just help the Jerusalem poor to eat. They even helped Paul in his trial before the governor Felix. How can our generosity get the attention of non-Christians to make them more open to the gospel? Remember this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. That's the verse that Dave really landed on, how our giving should be joyful. And it goes back to what Jesus said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. And I'm just guessing that there's some of you in the room right now that can give examples. So why don't you do that? Share examples of areas in your life where this principle of sowing is true. It could be finances, marriage, parenting, sports, whatever. But our giving, our generosity does in fact bring great joy to our lives. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that having all sufficiency in all things at all times, you may abound in every good work. As it is written, He has distributed freely, He has given to the poor, His righteousness endures forever. Why is it that our giving is connected to God's grace? I mean, we talk about giving, and a lot of people hear it like, oh, you just need to keep the lights on at the church. We just need to pay our staff salaries. No, it's way more than that. Giving is not about supporting the local church. It's about evangelizing a broken world. Your generosity to our church has allowed us to do things like compassion in other countries, to the poorest in the world. It's allowed us to fight human trafficking. It's allowed us to pay staff that brings the gospel to people. It's allowed us to have children's programming that is so good that once a parent drops a kid off, they have to come back the next week because the kids are bringing the parents back. There's so much good that comes out of it. One of the greatest goods is what it does in your heart. To connect your heart to the heart of Jesus and what His priorities are in this world. So, why does Paul connect God's grace to our giving? How are they related? Paul concludes this chapter with a flurry of theology on giving. It's almost overwhelming. Listen, he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will supply and multiply your seed for sowing and increase the harvest of your righteousness. You will be enriched in every way, to be generous in every way, which through us will produce thanksgiving to God. For the ministry of the service is not only supplying the needs of the saints, but is also overflowing in many thanksgivings to God. By their approval of this service, they will glorify God because your submission that comes from your confession of the gospel of Christ and the generosity of your contribution for them and for all others, while they long for you and pray for you because of the surpassing grace of God upon you. Whew, that's a mouthful. Here's the challenge. Where do you need to trust God more? For you, it could be giving. For many people, it is. That what you give to God doesn't match your confession of faith in God. But it could also be, if we go back to some of the previous lessons, in personal worship. Are you spending time with the Lord every day in private? It could be your service. Are you doing something at CCV or maybe in the community that expresses your faith appropriately? What you say you believe, is it lived out in the way you act? What are your next steps to get into the ring? Instead of shadowboxing, to actually get in the fight, we need you engaged. Someone who doesn't know Christ needs you to get in the ring.